What is your legal name? Sounds like a stupid question, right? It's actually much more complicated than some people may realize. For example, if you were born and your birth certificate includes multiple last names and multiple first names, which happens to be the case in most of Latin America, and then you get married and you use one last name, and then you get divorced and move to the US, and in the process, your passport cuts off one of the names. What is your legal name? It's actually a really complicated question in some situations, and that's what this video is about. When people from certain countries come to the United States, they feel a pressure to shorten their name because Americans like to use one first name and one last name and maybe have a middle name, which is technically considered another first or given name. If you look on your passport, your middle name will typically be right after your first name in the given name section. This can become complicated because when you come over, if your passport has a shortened version of your name that's provided on your birth certificate because, for example, your home country has some loose laws and they didn't really super verify your last name when you applied for your passport, this can create a little bit of a legal problem when you subsequently go to apply for a green card and you're not sure whether you should use the full last name on your birth certificate or the slightly shortened last name on your passport. Brings up a lot of questions, and that's what I'm going to talk about right now. Names can be a really complicated thing because there are 50 states and each one kind of loosely followed their own rules. And I've seen situations where people have been using a shortened version of their birth name on a driver's license for 30 years and all of their US documents are now in that name, but that is not actually their full legal name. And when we apply for a green card or an immigration benefit, I revert back to their actual legal name. So the question becomes, what is your legal name? So we have to look chronologically back in time. When you're born, your birth certificate is your legal name until you legally change your name again. There's a few ways that you can legally change your name. The most common one is a name change petition in court, but that is a complicated and often somewhat expensive process. It's time consuming here in New York. It takes a few weeks or months at the very least. A judge has to sign off on it. So that's not the most preferred way for most people to change their names. Another way that some states allow people to change their name is with a marriage certificate. But actually, in my experience, the number of states that allow you to do this purely through a marriage certificate are in the minority. For example, New York happens to be one of them, where when you get married, New York State will issue a marriage certificate which will indicate your new surname. Your marriage certificate in this instance is your name change document. So from birth up until the date of marriage, you had your birth name, and then from marriage on, you have this new surname, this new last name. If you want to get divorced, the divorce certificate will typically say you may resume using your premarital name, in which case you can revert back legally. Another way to change your name easily is with a certificate of naturalization. When you apply for the N-400 application for naturalization, which is citizenship, there will be a question that asks, do you want to change your name? Yes or no? If you want to, you just check the yes box, and then you can provide literally any name that you want. Any first name, middle name, last name, any combination. It doesn't have to have any bearing on who you actually are. You can literally just provide any name you want, and when the application gets approved, and you receive your certificate of naturalization, this will be your name change document. It'll say your full new legal name. It'll say the date that the certificate was issued. From this date forward, this is your legal name until you change it with one of the mechanisms I mentioned. To be completely honest with you, there are some instances where it's so complicated that it takes me a really long time to figure out what the legal name is that we should be using for the person, because they have a long birth name on their birth certificate. They got married in a state that didn't legally change their name on the marriage certificate, so they should have continued using that birth name legally. But for some reason, back in the 80s, the Social Security Administration just began using some shortened version of their name or their marital name, and then they managed to get a driver's license and all of these documents, legal documents in this new name, which is not technically their legal name. It can be kind of complicated. So if this is an issue that you're struggling with, just know you have to figure out what your legal name is, and a lawyer can help you do this. Specifically, depending on the state you live in, it might be a more complicated issue than other states, but if you need help with this, just know that you could always reach out to me or my office, schedule a consultation, and I'll go through your entire history with you and figure it out so we can apply for your immigration documents using your correct legal name. All right, guys, I'm Puyandarian, and I'll see you next week for another video.